All right, mic test 1 2 3. Mic test 1 2 3. All right, guys, come on, let's assemble, Hey, where are the other guys, man? Mic test 1 2 3. Mic test 1 2 3. Hey, guys. Hey, hi, Dizin. Hello. Hey, hi, guys. Hello. Okay, let's give about a minute for others to join up. I'm just finding out just the right video for you for defect management. Hey, hey guys, quick mic check 1 2 3. You can see my screen and hear me both. All clear? All clear? Let me know, please. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. Until so, what I'm going to do is let me show you a little video on bug management. Yeah, it's same about what we did yesterday as defect tracking. So warm up to this video and then we can step forward. Yeah, just a sec. All right, guys, here it starts.
Bug lifecycle, also known as defect lifecycle. In software development process, the bug has a lifecycle. The bug should go through the lifecycle to be closed. Name of the bug status may vary, depends on the tools and the process followed in the organization. Bug can be defined as the abnormal behavior of the software. Bug starts when defect is found and ends when a defect is closed, after ensuring it is not reproduced. In the next video, we see what is the difference between bug, defect, error, and failure. Let's continue with the current video. Now we see the different states of bug in the bug lifecycle in detail. New. When a tester finds a new defect, the status of the defect posted by the tester is new. The tester should provide a proper defect document to the development team to reproduce and fix the defect. Assigned. Defects which are in the status of new will be approved if valid and assigned to the development team by test lead or project lead or project manager. The status of bug changes to assigned. If the development team accepts the bug, then the bug status changes and that status is open. If the bug status is open, then it means that the development team starts analyzing and works to fix the defect. Next state is fixed, which means when developer makes necessary code change and verifies the change, then the status of the bug will be changed as fixed and the bug is passed to testing team. Here the development team changes the bug status to test. If the status is test, it means the defect is fixed and ready to do test whether it is fixed or not. Verified. The tester retests the bug after it got fixed by the developer. If there is no bug detected in the software, then the bug is fixed and the status assigned is verified. Closed. After verified the fix, if the bug is no longer exist, then the status of bug will be assigned as closed. Sometimes while doing retest, we may encounter the same issue again, which means the bug was not fixed properly. Now testers change the status as reopen. If the defect remains the same after the retest, then the tester posts the defect using defect retesting document and changes the status to reopen. Again, the bug goes through the life cycle to be fixed. Duplicate. If the defect is repeated twice or the defect corresponds the same concept of the bug, the status is changed to duplicate by the development team. Deferred. In some cases, project manager or lead may set the bug status as deferred. If the bug found during end of release and the bug is minor or not important to fix immediately, if the bug is not related to current build, if it is expected to get fixed in the next release, customer is thinking to change the requirement, in such cases, the status will be changed as deferred and it will be fixed in the next release. Rejected. If the system is working according to specifications and bug is just due to some misinterpretation, such as referring the old requirements or extra features, then team lead or developers can mark such bug as rejected. Some other states of bugs are cannot be fixed, technology not supporting, root of the product issue, cost of fixing bug is more, not reproducible, platform mismatch, improper defect document, data mismatch, build mismatch, inconsistent defects. Need more information. If developer is unable to reproduce the bug as per the steps provided by tester, then the developer can change the status as need more information. In this case, tester needs to add detailed reproducing steps and assign bug back to the development team for fix. This won't happen if the tester writes a good defect document. Click here to see best practice to write a defect document. Thanks friends. If you have any queries, please comment below. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to like the video. Please subscribe for more videos. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, guys, I think let's move. Uh, so, okay, great. So, guys, I chose this video deliberately only because it gives probably the easiest video which I have seen in the recent times, which gives you a perfect clarity on the defect management process as it happens in Jira. I chose it deliberately because you'll be using Jira. So I want you to be fully conversant in terms of the status assigned, in terms of work in progress, things which are monitored and tracked by you, in terms of its completion status, so that you can ratify it as done. So eventually, one of the jobs in while you manage the Jira tool is to make sure that your progress tracking, updation, and reporting from Jira tool is pretty much precise. Yeah, so this was an effort in that direction in terms of you to appreciate the defect management process primarily from an operational perspective. Yeah, so I think we may have one more link at least where we might be able to appreciate the defect management or more on quality assurance in Agile, but I'll probably make you see that a little later. Yeah. Okay. So coming back, guys, let me give a full screen and then we can. Okay. So yesterday, guys, if you see my screen, we did something on the defect management prevention process, principle 1, 2, and 3. And today I want to just give you further on views on the same. So eventually remember, what we are doing is, guys, the quality assurance process. Okay. So it's the quality assurance process which incubates primarily defect management as one of the major areas of work. Now, if you look at my screen, guys, you see that these are the development phases of a software product, right? So if you look at the SDLC, you have requirements, design, coding, manual creations, and fixes. So I want to tell you that how much percentage of defects get introduced or take origin, yeah, from these different phases. So if you see requirement accounts for at least about 1/5 of the total defects. Design, which is the functional specification, design writing, design specs writing. So entire specification is almost contributing to almost 1/4 of the defects. If you look at coding, it's close to 1/3. So 1/3 of defects in Agile lifecycle comes primarily from the coding perspective. Now, as we look at these things, I mean, you might like to ask me that do we have a mitigation for the same? And yes, of course we have. So let's take up coding, for example. So coding, we have some minimum coding standards to adhere to while we do the actual programming in software development lifecycle. So your programmers in your team are likely going to be very, very familiar with those coding standards, number one. Second, post writing the code, they will run a sanity check on the codes, which will bring out any kind of deviation which the code may have. So the code, guys, can be the code can be good, bad, ugly from two different perspectives. Yeah, one, if it is written in the right way, obviously, and it better be right, because if the syntax and the other things, let's say there are certain errors, the code won't run only. That is one part of the story. The qualitative aspect of a good code is that it's a code which should be responsible to maintain a very flexible parameters within the overall code inventory, which means you cannot be generally doing a hard code. Okay, so the code has to be flexible. You can set up some, I mean, not you, but of course the coding guy in your team, he rather use some kind of a flexible table parameters instead of doing a hard coding, so that the same code can be flexibly replicated for maybe similar scenarios if there are any throughout the system. Okay, so remember, coding, when I say 35% of the errors for any software development lifecycle comes via coding, which also means, guys, that in case those errors get left behind, which may not be stalling the code to run, and hence your process is running anyways, but the fact is they are generating what we call technical trash in your system. So what happens is that if the codes are not very flexible, they generate a lot of unnecessary kind of data, something which makes your system heavy. And once the heaviness goes increasing over a period of time, the fact is that it impacts your system running, your system performance, and so many of other quality parameters. So the fact is that if defects in coding are almost one third of the entire software cycle, it makes us, as an agile coach or scrum master, it makes it very important for you to institutionalize the standard coding practices. And I don't deny the fact that the people in your team who are coders will be pretty much trained in that, no doubt. But the fact is, in spite of their training, in spite of them being senior enough, the fact is, why still you have one third of the errors coming from coding? And obviously the answer is very simple, guys. The answer is that it is due to lack of a stringent adherence to those coding standards, which again makes sure that one third of the defects come up in coding cycles. So don't we have the coding standards? We don't adhere to it. Don't we have the right manuals to to stick to them? Don't aren't there any senior programs in the team which can which can view the code, peer review it, whatever the other programmers may have written? So the answer to all that may be yes, but the fact is, do we then have a concrete result of having very limited errors from the code? So as a, I mean, of course, it will eventually, it's your accountability as a scrum master. So you may like to keep it in your mind that these are sensitive areas where the defects come in, and then of course you will spend all the time in the world in terms of defect mitigation and rectifications, etc. Better that we rather stick to those kind of protocols which help us prevent these errors in the first place. So if you look at the slide on the right hand side, it suggests certain areas which your team would be doing in order to prevent that. One is called peer review. So peer review is somebody senior programmer reviewing the codes which your team would have written. So self review, peer review is very, very important. Then you as a scrum master can make a lot of use of Jira in terms of defect logging and ensuring that they are documented, so that your team is able to make a quick analysis on the root cause of them and do something to make it more preventive. Okay, so these kind of procedures which are embedded into the software development process ensure that your overall quality assurance is secured. Okay, so yeah, I was just checking how many fellows have turned up. All right, if I want to give you a little more 5,000 feet view about defect prevention. So guys, requirement analysis and design phase actually contribute defects which encompass a larger problem areas. So when I say, so if you see here, so requirement and design are contributing almost 45% of the errors, right? So it's practically 50-50. Is that so? No. From the studies made by various software development life cycles communities, it's evident that a lot of errors are due to the errors in requirement phases, which means if you look at this slide, I'm saying percentage of defect introduced. If you look at this slide, I want to tell you that the effect of those errors, okay, so the effect of errors if done in requirement and design phase is way more, is a bit more deeper than what is done in coding and implementation, because the reason is very clear. If you do some kind of a error in coding, frankly fixing it up is pretty simple. You just, there is a tool, for example, it's called code inspector. So when you write the code, what they do is the programmers, they just quickly run the code inspector on their code. Code inspector as a tool quickly tells them that where, what changes they may do in order to make their code more efficient. All right. And that is, guys, when we say, hey, fixing up a error from a coding or testing perspective is rather simpler. But remember, if you have made an error on the requirement parts, then don't forget that the time taken by it to go back to your stakeholders, get the rectification done. Okay, first having the right clarity. Second, uh, rectifying your as-is and to-be process flows. Third, making sure that you walk through the stakeholders with that different solution which has now emerged out of your requirements because the requirement has changed, right? So what I'm trying to say is, guys, that rectifying the errors in requirement and design is more deeper as compared to the defects that you may have, you may like to mitigate from a coding and a testing perspective, right? So because coding testing is honestly a way more, I would say, way more operational, in nature. And since your team is fairly, sophisticated and mature with respect to that, so it helps them to, come to that conclusion more quickly. Okay. Software requirement analysis. Errors in software requirements and software design are more frequent, that we have understood. Defect introduced during requirements are not only more probable, but more severe and more problematic to remove. I think we already discussed that. Okay, so that's on the self-review. So guys, from a self-review perspective, in terms of eradicating the amounts of errors in the typically in the coding and testing phase, one effective technique is called self-review. It's most effective activity in discovery of error defects which may later be exposed by maybe testing team or unfortunately by the customer itself. So after a self-review of the code helps reduce the defects related to incorrect logic, because you wrote the code, you're reviewing it yourself. Once the developer feels that they are ready with the module code, a glance through the code and understanding what does it do compared to what it is supposed to do would complete the self-review process. Okay, so your team needs to do some kind of self-review, and then comes peer review. So let's say Didin writes a code and Anchal reviews it. Now, Anchal may or may not be senior as compared to Didin. It's all right. I mean, it's just having a attention from a different pair of eyes in terms of, correcting the code if required. So the only difference between self-review and peer review is that in peer review, somebody else does the review for you. Okay, back to defect tracking. So something which you saw in the video, guys, that defect tracking will be more in form of logging the defects, examining the defects, and providing the structure to resolve them. But remember, the only important point is it all begins with logging the defects. So somebody needs to log them in Jira, and then Scrum Master may need to analyze them a bit, and then somebody needs to correct it. Guys, you may like to just have a very quick read of this. So logging helps, guys, because it helps to document defects, and more important, it helps to document some of the unique part of the defects. So, the defects which are unique. Uniqueness of defects better be captured by you guys. You know what? The more inquisitive you are to pick up the defects which are unique in nature and hence need a unique answer as well, is something which will stand by you very well. I think we also had a good discussion on the root cause analysis yesterday. So guys, Scrum Master needs to see the symptoms, okay, of the recurring problem, and then analyze and do a causal analysis and then rectify. So guys, remember, please remember that you are providing only the guidance to your team. So whoever is the main programmer or the tester or the functional configurator of your team, you just need to make sure that they are doing some kind of an analysis and study so as to bring back to you maybe every fortnight to tell you or update you about what are the recurring trends they saw in their respective areas. So there's a category of error, right? We got errors in configuration, we got errors in coding, testing, programming, etc. So these guys are going to make the analysis themselves, come back to you, give you a small Excel as a report. What does the report say? Number one, what are the symptoms they notice from the recurring problems? Number two, what seems to be the problem? Third, what seems to be causing that problem? Fourth, what is the analysis? Fifth column, what they think is going to be the likely solution for the same. So remember, while you go ahead with your sprint after sprint, but building up an experience curve for yourself and your team in terms of ensuring quality by making the defect management process work will be very, very useful for you. So root cause analysis, aims more at evolving the qualitative part of your system rather than quantitative. Obviously, root cause is great. You see recurring trends happening, you make a solution and put it in. All those recurring trends will never come up as bugs. This means in one stroke you eliminate maybe 10, 20, 30 bugs which were otherwise coming in a month. That's a quantity part. The quality part is when you rectify your system like that, the good thing is that those errors just go away, and then what comes up as a bug is something which you are again analyzing, etc. And then what's the good thing is that it helps you to improve or enhance the quality of your technical inventory in your system, because you do 3 root causes, let's say in a month. Each root cause was actually bringing 20 errors. So in one stroke you eliminate 60 errors for every month. Because if you would have let those errors be there, they would have given birth to 20 errors every month. So while you reduce 60 errors, what happens? That you don't have to do defect mitigation for those 60 errors, which you are doing in your operational nature of work every month. Second, you don't have to add defect resolution. This means you don't have to provide, even though they were standard defect resolutions which you were giving to, as the configurator or tester in your team was giving it to, to rectify those errors. They don't have to do that anymore. So this means you're saving quality and effort both, something which you can put use to, for making more other quality changes in your project. So guys, remember in root cause, because the causal analysis is deep, and I'll give you an example for that. Let's say we are booking orders for the customers, and the sales order is being generated. Okay. Now let's say we have thousands and thousands of customers. I'm talking about any company or a client, right? So the number of sales orders is very high. So what happens is, as a logical next step to sales order is the delivery. So delivery note has to be generated for all the customers related to the material which is being dispatched to them. Yeah. When you create a delivery note, what happens when you have to actually load that product for, let's say, Didin and company in a transport vehicles, you have to do a goods issue. Yeah. So you book orders for Didin and company, you make a delivery note for the same, and then you load it up in a transport mechanism, and we say, okay, in the ERP system, we say, all right, we are now going to create a goods issue. Now there is a repetitive error which is coming. And what is that error? Goods issue is not being created. Why? Goods issue is the immediate subsequent process step from after delivery. So this means when the system creates a delivery note, it should actually automatically create the goods issue. It's not happening. All right. So this problem started last Monday, and within 3-4 days we had hundreds of deliveries which were not made to the customers because the goods issue was not able to be generated from the system. All right. So it's a very troublesome situation. Then somebody did a root cause analysis for this, and they realized in order to generate goods issue, the the post the delivery note, there is a certain field in the goods issue documentation which needs a certain tax code. Now the tax code is not getting populated in every goods issue, and hence no goods issue is being able to get generated. Fair enough? Makes sense? So the fact is, guys, that one important step, if it gets missed out, eventually the deliverable you can't produce. And if the warehouse cannot produce the goods issue, it cannot actually send the material to the customer, because the goods issue node has to go along with the material. So it's a mandatory thing which you have to give to the transport guy, right? Okay. So that is where we say, okay, we want to do a root cause analysis, because every month I have some 70-80 goods issue which fail. Before we are able to give a workaround for them. But this month we won't give a workaround. We will give a categorical solution. And what does that mean? It means that we will be able to analyze. We know why it fails. Now I understood. I always thought goods issue is not getting generated because either delivery node doesn't get the right population of master data from the systems, or there were other related reasons. But I never did a root cause, and now when I am doing it for all the errors since last 3 months, I realized, goodness me, it was the tax code which was not getting populated in the delivery node from the tax structure. So there's a tax structure kind of a thing within the system. Like there is a customer master database, there's a material master database, there's a price master database. Just like that, within pricing, there is a tax master database. So for some reason, this tax code is not getting generated in goods issue. This means that the tax code, when it gets populated in goods issue, it brings the relevant tax percentage with itself. So that tax percentage will go over and above the delivery note price. So the point here is that it helps to to aim at systematic errors, and something which helps a lot in terms of making the qualitative changes in the project. So guys, typically you Scrum Masters end up using Pareto chart a lot, because Pareto chart gives us the defect category and the highest frequency of the errors which is coming from separate defect categories. Okay, so that is the count of errors which you get from different. So who generates Pareto chart? Thanks to Jira, it gets generated by the tool itself. So remember, your job as a Scrum Master is to ensure that you have logged the defect, you've given it a category status, and then you're tracking it for closure. So there's a date and timestamp when the defect was raised. There's a date and timestamp when the defect was closed. So all that info must be entered into the tool. If you remember, guys, we have done fishbone diagram in business analysis as well. A simple graphical technique for sorting and relating factors that contribute to a given situation. Okay, so what is that? If you see this diagram, it's like a fish. This is the fish main body in the middle, and this looks like her fins or extended parts of the body. Now, each of this so-called fins is like a change. Okay, and then this attached to this is the sub change. What does it say? We are analyzing, and actually we created a fishbone diagram for defect management. So we said, hey, let's do a cause and effect. What is causing this error, and along with that let's attach what are the effects of the same. So let's say this is a more simpler one where we say, okay, what the problem is, guys, that we are not able to meet the schedule of the project. Okay, what are the reasons? Number one, customer is introducing a lot of changes. Cause, what is effect? Customer expectation not analyzed properly for the involved activities. So if you see team members not working properly, that is probably the effect. What is the reason? Lack of experience, lack of training, lot of interruptions, etc. So what is the advantage of this? So you as a Scrum Master can make use of this fishbone diagram to show cause of the defect and its effects as well. So it can be 1:many relationship between the cause and the effects. So if you can create this, what happens is, and then you walk your team through it, what happens is that the functional and technical consultant get a lot of help, and then they are able to come to some quicker conclusion in terms of how to eliminate these. Yesterday we discussed that, hey guys, Agile is great. It helps to reduce our time to market. It helps us to process and progress and construct and deploy our changes faster. Fantastic. But remember, the testing phase almost has 35% of the overall effort which you include in your project. So that is the testing part. And then what we discussed was that, guys, if you have automated testing, it can tremendously reduce the effort and the time spent by the team on testing, number one, and it will terrifically help to maintain the agility of the project. Agility of the project is the speed of the project, and obviously the speed is going to be way better, and the pace at which the project progresses is a lot better in case you have test automations. Number one, test automation gives precise results. Number two, there's no confusion, there's no debate. If it's test failed, it failed. It passed, it passed. The third thing is that thanks to automation of testing, you can do a lot of testings automated. For example, regression testing, functional testing, system testing, script testing. So all kind of these testing which are done either on the business process or on the systems are now fully automated. So see, I'll tell you something. What is Agile? It's a continuous build and test of incremental delivery that you want to make to the customer. Fair enough? Okay. Now the continuous build and tests in which there are, as I said, unit tests, functional test, integration test, etc. It brings a tremendous amount of variety of testing which needs to be done. And hence, applying automation makes a lot of common sense. And you know what? It happens more in Agile. Because in waterfall projects, client may not be too keen to invest in automation. So what is investment here? There's a lot. If you want to do automated testing, then your client has to bring those tools which help to do automated testing. Number one. The second investment is that testing includes automated testing includes writing automation scripts. So when you write automated scripts, what happens is that the scripts feed in themselves into the system. And then when you say, I got a multiplicity of testing to be done, you just run the scripts. So the tester doesn't have to put his mind at all in terms of feeding in the data for each business scenario into the system so that it can run that particular testing. So these are scripts where the business data is already populated. It's only one conditional value which you put into that kind of a scenario before you actually clear the entire test. Okay, so automation coverage should be as high as possible. Okay, some challenges in test automation. One, insufficient test coverage, which means that code changes that were not anticipated early lead to inadequate test coverage. Automation and regression test suite ensures existing functionality is well tested so as to ensure that it's working as per the requirements. So guys, what is insufficient test coverage? You have 50 scripts that care for 50 business scenarios. Okay, and you have a testing script for that. You can run those scripts anytime just to check the system. Okay, or when you introduce new code changes, after introduction of code changes, then you repeatedly test the system so as to ensure that whatever is any point of time, whatever is going is green. So you have automation script for a particular business scenario, but then last week Ankita made a code change in that business process. So she wanted to make it, the process runs faster. So she made a code change. That's fine. But did we create a script now for based on the new code? If we didn't, then your earlier script may not run properly on that particular testing. This means you had 50 automated scripts, great. But then when you kept updating codes for various business processes, or you kept changing configurations and multiple other things, you need to create the testing coverage into it as well. So you may say, hey, I got an automation testing going on, fine. But then what's the use if you have 30 business scenarios to test, and honestly, your scripts are good enough to test only 15 of them. So as the business scenarios change, you have to ensure that the test coverage is also done, which means the automated test scripts are also written alongside. Okay. Many, Scrum Master I have come across in the last 5 years, they are very keen on making the code change at a drop of the hat. So any change is required, they will first, call their uh, programmer and say, guys, be ready for code changes. So they believe only in one thing, code changes. So typically, Scrum Masters which come from the code experience, coding experience, they are very used to this. But I think that's where I want to break that cycle in all of you. Scrum Master has to be, as usual, it has to be more business oriented. So you're not functional configuration oriented guy, you're not programming oriented guy. Yes, you believe in testing is great because you want to ensure the quality assurance of your process. So frequent building of the codes breaks the code. It breaks it down because the likelihood of an error is becomes high. Your team is constantly touching the codes all over the place, right? It's possible that while improving a code, they might have introducing some error in the other code. Then comes performance blockages. So what is this? When Ankita improved the code, you know what she did? It was a 10-liner code. She introduced another 15 lines to it. The code became a 25-liner code. So what happens? As I said, explained earlier, your technical inventory keeps on increasing. And if more heavier the system you kind of end up creating, the more performance issues start coming for your systems. So performance of the system is ensured keeping a lighter technical inventory in your system, number one, and second, ensuring that in case your system content is increasing, the database sizing must increase as well so that the performance of the system is not reflected. Okay. Some quickly, some disadvantages of test automations. It's obviously, guys, it's the advantage that there's a quick turnaround. Testing can be finished very quickly. Second, because Agile calls for, a repetitive building of a code and configuration, it sounds like a good news because you have no worries. You have an automated testing suite. So even if Agile is doing a lot of changes in your scenarios, etc., it's all right. You can you just run your automated scripts on every new emerging scenario to check what or may not be the error. And obviously, the some of the flip sides of test automation is that, I mean, it in any case, Agile calls for the quality assurance guy to play multiple roles, right? And one of his role of a quality manager in Agile project is to deal with the automation tools. Plus must have a functional good knowledge as well. So overall, even today, test automation is sitting somewhere between the advantages and disadvantages. But I can assure you that 60 to 70% of the organization have already automated their testing platforms. So advantages, obviously, continuing advantages of test automation is we have a assured quality. And then since automation is required in every phase of the Agile process, it's obviously becomes your team's responsibility to maintain that kind of a quality for the product. The other, so some of the flip side is there can be a lot of time spent on maintenance of existing automation suites. Since Agile allows, bracket grudgingly, some scope creep. So overall, test automation is great, but remember, it also includes, increasing the difficulty for QA to manage multiple sprints. Okay, spend a minute with the slide, no hurry. Okay, shall we move forward? Guys, these are very simple explanatory slides, so I'm not really, spending too much time on them. Okay, guys, welcome to a small class exercise. So what is this exercise about? Uh, Again, since it's more to do with change management, I will probably, so I think yesterday, thanks to Sawan, we had at least some discussion on, even if it was not a very high level change, but still his organization did undergo a change and he was able to, tell us a little bit of experience about it. Okay, so I just want you to take a note of this problem and think about it. It again reflects to any kind of a change initiative which your organization did. I'll read out what exactly I want you to think about. How well does your organization function during change efforts? So changes are rampant, right? They must be going in your organization all the time. How well did your organization respond to all those changes? Okay. Second, how well positioned is your organization to absorb the changes? Now, it depends on the maturity and readiness of your organization. If your organization is mature enough, without creating any significant load of work in some areas where changes are coming, they'll still be able to sail through the changes quite well. And when they do that, if your organization has done that, I want you to think, what type of resources do they involve there who are able to pull through this thing very well? So it obviously depends on the observation which you may have on any such experience which your organization had in terms of initiating and executing a particular change. Yep. And that time when this change is happening, what is the leadership capability which is there in your organization? What is the sponsor, like who has been the sponsor of this, and how active your sponsor has been in terms of driving this change? The reason why this organization went through a change, what was the reasons for that? What were the tactical advantages which they wanted to go through in order to come up to these changes? Okay. Then what generates, what do you need to improve support? And in case there were roadblocks, in that change getting initiated and implemented, what do you think you need to improve? What support structures you think your organization needed at that point of time to make sure that the change goes through successfully? Yeah. And obviously, if your organization went through the change, what would you term the corporate culture of your organization as? Because you would have noticed the hits and the misses during the change enablement life cycle. Yeah. And remember that, guys, these change can be anything. It can be a software change, it may be a completely non-software change. It is fine. We just want to notice the way organization reacted, behaved, planned, designed, and executed the change. That's all is the observations I need from you. You can think about this. Yep, of course, I'm not leaving you like that. So guys, potentially what do you have to do? Please notice the risks and potential obstacles which you saw while the organization was going through changes. if were there any what were the good communications done that time, what were the bad communications that time, was the training which was done for the users, was it weak or strong? Okay, and anything special that you notice about the entire change management. So I want you to think of this and give on each parameter a scoring to your organization. Okay, so the score can be on a level of 1 to 5. So I want you to rate your organization in a particular area. If you say 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, this means you're giving it very high commendations. And if you're giving maybe obviously lower score, which means there was a lot better could have been done during the change enablement cycle. Okay. So, and in case you may have some time to think on this, obviously, I want you to act as a soft change manager for that particular perspective. If you were a change manager leading that change for your organization, what additional you may have done to ensure that your change proposition goes down very well with the entire organization and results obviously in a very positive scenarios. So guys, if you understood this, then I would like you to please do this as a small assignment. Yeah, and that is how probably we may be able to, it's all right, I mean, you can create a small word document listing out the troubles, risks, obstacles, readiness, maturity, mitigations, any kind of the things that you want to list it out, and you can send the document to me and I'll be able to track that and check that out, give you some suggestions. It's a mock assignment, guys, will help you to appreciate changes in a better perspective. Okay, all right, deck 4. All right, there we go with the. All right. So guys, you're seeing my screen, right? The entire LMS for every, like topic, that's how you see the agile topics. Yeah, in your LMS. Each topic, guys, has three things. One is the presentation, which I walk you through and make you understand. There is quizzes in each, which you may like to please attempt, because I think we may not have time to attempt all the quizzes, but I think we may do some in later classes. But I want you to please attempt each quiz after that we have covered a topic, just to have a brief check on how clear of an understanding that you may have had on that particular topic. Okay, I just want to show you a quiz. I'm sure most of you may have, opened it up. Yeah, so there are at least 15, 18 odd answers, sorry, questions, and most of them obviously have the right answer as well. Okay, so please check this to appreciate, what could be a right answer for this. Check your knowledge, understanding, etc. And then there is an additional reading as well. So for example, we are now going to do the topic on distributed agile, a very important and key topic, because it helps us to appreciate as a scrum master, how do we do agile for distributed teams across the globe. Now if you see, there is add-on reading here. There's a special white paper on cognizant way of doing agile delivery with distributed teams. There is a kind of a case study on distributed agile development in a large project. There's again a additional white paper on distributed agile, in terms of offshoring, which obviously is happening so much these days, even for agile projects. So please take out some time. If you do want to do a lot of justice to this course, guys, you need to do this add-on readings and then come back to me for any queries. No, Savan, You saw that either there are those, the multiple, it's like a multiple choice questions. So either you saw that the ones which are colored yellow, those are the ones which are the answers to the same. And then where I don't have the yellow colors, there, whichever, option is valid, I have put in a checkbox in that, to indicate what is the right answer for that. Yep. So have you tried some of the quizzes? Okay, so give me a minute, guys. Just I'm taking the screen off just to find the best video to start off this distributed agile. All right. This is, the most, I would say, most challenging part of agile is the distributed agile. Yeah, because obviously it's challenging, guys. Imagine, one team sitting in Finland, one in Stockholm, one in India, one in China, maybe in Japan, or so it's so distributed. But unfortunately or fortunately, you have to make sure that all of them undergo, the project. They take it through agile cycle, through distributed agile. So all right, guys, I'm connecting up to show you the video. Yeah.
So let's go on to the first slide. And let's talk about the issue of.
Okay, guys, let me connect up here. Oh, speaker systems need to be. I have to change those, to. Okay, volume is high. Let me share my screen.
Geographically distributed teams in Agile. Agile was originally created for co-located teams, and we have many, many rituals and ceremonies for cross-functional and near to each other people. So when you have a geographically distributed team, you might be saying, I don't know how to do this business with standing up. How do we even have a time when all of us can be in the same room together, or at least in the same time, on the time-space continuum together? But here's what the data says. About half of all Agile teams are either distributed or dispersed. So in the past, people have said, well, just don't do that. But saying don't do that is not very helpful. So let's first think about what kind of a team do you have? So let's see if I can get the pointers. I think that you can see, yeah. So if you have a co-located team, that means that you're inside of 60 meters apart, right? You are all on probably the same floor. You're all together. You have a cross-functional co-located team. Now, what if you have a distributed team, but it's feature-based, right? This is the second top right corner. So you have feature teams, and they're separated from each other. So maybe you have 3 feature teams in your small program, but every location has its own feature team. Now, there's yet another way to talk about dispersed teams, and that's the bottom right-hand corner. That the dispersed teams here say we have 1 person in Colorado, 1 person in Boston, 1 person in India, 1 person in Paris, right? Or maybe that's not where you have your people, but that's the idea, that we have onesies and twosies in all kinds of places. That is a really difficult approach to Agile, and I'm going to be talking about that today. And what if you have siloed teams? The left quadrant here, the left bottom quadrant, that's where you have developers in one place, testers in another place, product owners in yet a third place, possibly project managers or program managers in a fourth place. I see these last two things often, right? The bottom half of this graphic. Yes, I did the graphic. You can tell people don't pay me for my graphic ability. But if you have co-located teams, Agile can be easy. Well, at least easy to do in principle. If you have distributed teams where people are all over the globe, but they're feature teams, Agile can still be easy. But once you have dispersed teams and siloed non-co-located teams, Agile starts to be pretty darn hard. So let's actually ask, how new are you to Agile? And maybe you can answer in the chat. You can say, let me explain this picture for a minute. Ideas come into the organization. Somebody who's a responsible person takes all of those ideas and creates a ranked backlog. The ranked backlog goes into this cross-functional team, and then periodically, I like every other day or so, the cross-functional team finishes complete work. Right, so you can finish one small thing and then another couple of small things. You keep adding to that finished complete work. After a while, say every couple of weeks, the team reflects on its process and does maybe a formal demo or a formal show and tell to that responsible person. And when you see that, when that responsible person sees that, they end up creating a new ranked backlog or changing what the team needs to work on next. So the team keeps pushing out, for lack of a better word, fully functioning, releasable product. And my question to you is, when you look at this picture, do you say, I don't know, that's not quite what we're doing, right? That's the first option. I thought I knew what Agile meant, but when I look at your picture, I'm not so sure. Or are you in the second bullet, where we have the rhythm of the iterations or the concept of flow, but we don't actually get to this releasable product on a regular basis? Or are you in the third bullet? Many of our iterations are shippable. Our testers are integrated into our iteration. So it's not that you're doing development first inside an iteration and then testing, but everyone is together integrated. And are you in the fourth bullet, where we treat every iteration as if it's our last? Every iteration is shippable. So maybe you can say to me in the chat where you are. Are you number 1? Are you number 2, number 3, or number 4? So we have at least one person who says third bullet. I see 3s, I see 2s. That's in 3s, means that you're at least figuring out what to do. And someone says, we embrace Agile and Scrum framework, but struggle with incremental iterative release, especially working on incorporating more continuous integration and testing. So for those of you who are struggling, who are in at least number 2, I see a number 1 over here. you really want to figure out how can you get the team to work together. And if you're at number 3, the good news is you're pretty darn close to what we want as an Agile approach, right? Sometimes you mess up, but by and large, you could release if you wanted to. So thank you for telling me where you are, because now I can push this. I can think about you folks are numbers 2s and 3s by and large. And for those of you who are still number 1, if you want, you can read stuff on my blog. Look at the tag called Transition to Agile. And for those of you who are number 4, I'm assuming it's all about how to get the team working better. So I'm going to pitch this presentation to numbers 2 and 3, where you have the rhythm of iterations of the concept of flow, but you're not always releasable. And number 3 is many of our iterations are shippable. Our testers are integrated, but maybe you want to figure out how do we make things just a little bit better. Okay, so let's go into the tips. The first one is chartering the project. If you don't know about project charters, you might want to take a look at some. I've written a bunch of articles about it. I have a number of tips, well, a whole chapter in chartering the project in Manage It, Your Guide to Modern Pragmatic Project Management. So the idea in chartering is not that a project manager creates the vision, but the team creates the vision. Why are we doing this project? What is the output? What will people be able to do once they're done with this project, right? When we release this product, what is the vision of what people can do with it? That allows you to create release criteria. Ray says, like a theme for a release. Yes, Ray, that is like a theme. I'm suggesting that you actually write this down and have it as a whole document on a shared wiki or a shared forum, whatever you use for sharing project documents. So that's the vision. You can also know what done means for the entire release. You know what done means for stories, right? That's incorporated into the story.
Talk about scaling Agile up and
Okay, looking back. All right, guys. So, quick point. What did you learn about from this video? Just as an initial pre-concept, what did you understand about distributed agile? Any views, guys? Guys, any learning from this video? Just give me a very brief idea. What is the fundamental that you have understood from this? Hey guys, any view? Anybody amongst you? Hey, did you, uh, was it more of a general understanding for you? Did you get any kind of an idea out of this? Hey, you better tell me, man. I've got a long deck to take you through the same, but I just want to have an idea. Could you just pull up few terms, few keywords out of this? All right, you can take your time to answer, guys. Maybe let me go through this. Okay, guys, so in this session, we will learn more about delivery models for an agile shop, which is distributed across geographies. Okay, we will also do scenarios where we have multi vendors kind of models. This means not just one, which means for a client, it's probably Accenture, IBM, TCS, Wipro, four different vendors, and all of them are providing or contributing to the overall agile value chain. So, how does that model work? Yeah. Then, when such multiple distributed model has to work, what is the level of communications and collaborations which you must install in the project as a scrum master? Okay, so that's a very important topic because these days, guys, majority of projects are multi-vendor. So I mean, obviously gone are the days when the clients used to award very large projects to a single vendor, which means today they don't want to keep all the eggs in one basket. So they prefer allocating either the different phases of the project, or they break the project into different efforts, and they allocate one chunk on effort to each vendor. Needless to say, guys, what they're also trying to do is they are trying to keep a very competitive shop, so that know if they have one vendor, in case they have quality issues with the vendor, it may take longer to get it rectified from the vendor, rather than a case where you have multi vendors. So obviously each vendor knows that if they are lagging on the delivery, quality, operations, user support, etc., then the piece of work which they have may go away from them. Yeah. So keeping in mind something like that, to keep a very brimming kind of a competitive situation alive in the project, the clients keep multiple vendors. But now what is our problem? Our problem is that we are driving in agile projects, right? And you as scrum master will have to learn that model, because you will have to work and survive with multiplicity of people who are going to act as your counterparts, obviously in the same project. So you are one scrum master, there might be other scrum master fielded by different vendors, because there is scrum of scrums. So you each will hold one track, and then you will work collaboratively. So how does that happen? How does that work out? That's what we will learn. I want to show you a day in the life of agile project. Yeah, what kind of overlap happens? So if you just pick and choose a single day in any agile project, how does it look like? What happens in the morning? What's the theme which they pick up, let's say in a particular stand-up meeting? After stand-up meeting, what do they do with the scrum board? Do they present some kind of a themes or epics to revalidate, or do they go on with their day-to-day regular working? Or it's like one of those typical days when there's a build and test and build and test and deploy kind of an effort? So how does it work? So I want to show you the daily schedule and arrangements on that overlap. Yeah. And I want to also show you that what are the distributed agile enablers. I mean, now that you are in a distributed shop of agile, and you need to, and obviously besides that you learn the mechanics for making it operate. You need to know what are the further enablements which are key for you as a scrum master to instill in the project, so that you know that these enablements will help the distributed agile shop to probably work more collaboratively, probably to uh, keep the better transparency and communications, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the one part of the story. The second part of the story is typically in a multi-vendor environment. Because it is so common, the moment you will step out of change management program, you will come across a word, guys, where there are only multiple vendors dominating most of the IT, kind of a landscape. So how you, engage yourself in a multi-vendor environment when it is customer managed. Scenario two, it is vendor managed and vendor collaborated. Scenario three, there are multiple parallel scrums going on. Okay, so you're being in the middle of it. How do you operate in terms of collaborations, planning, tracking? This is what you will learn from a multi-vendor environment. Okay, first, guys, let's look at the delivery models. So you say, hey, we got a project to deliver, and we got to deliver it in agile mode. All right, fantastic. So where does the distributed agile work? Distributed agile works where a distributed development project is basically a distributed, as the name suggests. Project is defined as a group of members actively collaborating on a common software system. Yeah, which are but separated by distance, time zone, and culture. So imagine now that you have a reasonable flair of the agile way of working. So imagine that you as a scrum master, are caring for three different distributed teams. One, a pure Chinese team sitting in Beijing. Okay. The second team purely sitting out of India. The third team purely sitting out of United Kingdom. Now think about it. Each team, all of them have a common scrum master, and that's you. And you are based out of India. Okay, but you have to ensure that all the three teams are working in tandem in agile methodology. So while you make them operate in scrum, what minimum I'm guaranteeing you is that they will be all agile certified, agile familiar, kind of people. But the fact is, an actual drivability of the project in order to accomplish the agile way of life, accomplish agile deliverables, make the project work in agile so that it can enjoy the optimum benefits of a faster time to market, reduced efforts, more consistent quality, etc., etc. Guys, this is somewhere where you will have to make that happen. All right, and that is where I would want you to be a rather strong agile or a scrum master, because that is something which is going to really make it make or break thing kind of thing for you. Because eventually, yeah, eventually people will have to uh, you know um, you have to make it happen. Okay, so guys, while I showcase you on one side, the view will be that, okay, how do you make it operate? I want to also show you what makes a distributed shop of agile very stimulating. Yeah, there are specific talents. Okay, now again, keeping in mind, please keep in mind that the distributed example of China, London, UK, and India. Okay, you will have specific talents sitting in individual shops. For example, if you have a very super duper kind of a design architect, that's probably happening in London. You don't have a key design architect out of your India team. So the multiple different talents are scattered in three different shops. Second, there's an obvious cost differential, which means, I mean, you may like the cheaper shop, for example, like India, where the blend cost, overall cost for each resource is way less than UK. So you may like more project to be done out of India because it's going to cost the overall project team less money. So cost differential is very, very important. You want to do take advantage of follow the sun approach. So what is follow the sun approach? As you know, sun rises in the east. So who comes alive earlier? It's the Japanese or the Chinese or Eastern teams. You are a team in China, so they're going to come in alive. Probably they are almost 4 to 5 hours ahead of you, at least 3 hours ahead of you. So they will start working in the morning on the agile deliverables and on the on where they want to finish it, on where they left yesterday. So they come in early. 3 hours after the Chinese team is up and running, the India team comes alive, right? And 5 hours after the India team comes alive, the United Kingdom team comes alive. That's a time zone gap. How do you take advantage of that? Because remember, the Chinese team is going to log out 3 hours before you, and you are going to log off 5 hours before the UK team. So we have a key thing here called the handover. So as the Chinese team logs out, what they do is they hand over the agile deliverable, whether it is programming or testing or formation of test scripts, etc. They hand over that task to India team, so that India team can continue you to take that to completion along with the other tasks and activities which they are doing. So a handover from China to India, and then a handover from India to Britain. Okay, and most likely, I don't know whether it doesn't really overlap, but in case you have a US team, they actually will be able to do a handover from themselves to the China team when they are logging off in their evening and China has already come alive in their morning. Yeah, so that's follow the sun approach. The fourth thing is the global presence. So this means if you have a distributed client as well, then your respective teams can make use of it by being closer to the product owner. But typically you may not have 3 different product owners for sure. Yeah, so how you want to engage your teams, which kind of a role, so that they have a maximum overlap with the client, with stakeholders, etc. That is done through the global presence. So a very simulated organization, I must say. So what happens when you say I got a distributed agile? A distributed agile is where, number one, the development teams like it as it includes iterative development and continuous integration. Fine, because that's the standard definition of agile. Second, business likes it as it sees the value as the project progresses. And distributed agile may not be applicable for all types of project, guys. Okay, so it's, I mean, as a scrum master, ask me, I find it as one of the most difficult challenges to run an agile shop successfully, as it is sitting in the different parts of the globe. So it is only to be done where you feel it must be done. All right. Okay. So how does development team like in distributed agile? As long as it has continuous iterative development and integration. Business likes it as long as it gets the business value out of it. Okay. Okay. Difference in a distributed model. The quality standards, guys, obviously I know each one of you is already feeling it. The quality standards will be more challenging to accomplish. Because in a co-located team, let's say all the 3 teams are co-located in Mumbai itself, it's much simpler to achieve the quality standards. What can you do? Hey, I can do a pair programming. Remember pair programming? Me and Ankita will jointly do the programming, whereas she will do and I will check, and then I will do and she will check. It's all right. We meet up in the office every day. That's pair programming for you. Okay. Second thing, obviously, if I have a error coming up, I have some lack of skill sets, I have a certain deficiency in terms of knowledge, it can be easily communicated or learned because I have most of the team sitting next to us. Right. So I walk up. I walk up to Mazebin and say, hey, my functional module in this coding is not happening right. What did you have you done ever done before? And she might say, yes, I've done that. So she might say, hey, let me have a quick look at your code. So in a joint location, I mean, obviously it's a tremendous advantage. During lunch, during coffees, you can anytime discuss. And that's what exactly happens in an agile shop. If I go to my shop where my projects are happening, across Mumbai, etc., different delivery centers, it's a very free environment for the entire project team. You see people, of my projects, they are like either while they're eating lunch together, two of them are passionately talking about the test case strategy right now. Few of them are jointly discussing some of the coding standards. Scrum masters are sitting together to compare notes on the challenges which one Scrum master is having in his shop, and obviously he's comparing notes with the other Scrum master to learn that in such a situation what can he do to mitigate that. Hey, it's a very, very commonsensical situation. That is like where likelihood of you guys sitting in such a shop is there. But then co-location, wow, it's fantastic. Now in a distributed team, guys, that you see on the slide on the right hand side, it's tougher because there's a less amount of empathy. For example, by now, let's say I and you guys are all part of my team, for example, right? So I know Dedin, I know Mazmin, I know Ankita, I know Anchal, I know their strengths, weaknesses. I can help them if I'm a bit senior, right? So I can do that. I can empathize with their shortcomings, if any they have. You can't do that in a co-located team. How what is the likelihood that you will empathize with one of the Chinese member team? So there is a cultural, I would say there's a cultural gap, which is also responsible in a way, to ensure that the things can't be so quickly aligned with each other. Okay, so let's go to the next slider. Okay, how can Agile make it better? So, principle number one, and guys, these are the very well researched principle in a distributed agile over the last 10 years of experience. This is not just me, there are multiple other senior trainers, and we have all agreed to a common principle forum through the kind of various fraternity meets that we have. So I have brought the best out of it on these slides. So kindly understand this, make some notes, and make sure that you are comfortable about this thing, because these are the most handy principles you can ever use as a scrum master when you want to set up distributed agile shops. First principle: do co-located agile first and then distribute it across different geographies. It takes time to learn this new practice as it is different from a traditional model. So please give some patience, some incubation and time to the project teams to make sure that they are enabled enough to work in a suitable agile perspective. Please appreciate that they have come from waterfall methodologies. So as much of time they may take to learn agile, as much as the time they may also take to unlearn their waterfall method. And hence it's important for you to slowly groom them, mentor them, etc. So allow several weeks for getting used to the self-organization. Third principle: command and control hides a lot of things, and it encourages something called blame game. If something is not how you like it to be, you just do whatever you like and blame someone else, right? And this is how you use the command and control. So if you're used to that kind of a area, which to be very honest with you, does happen in waterfall, I would say you want detailed work list. You don't estimate yourself. You want to be left alone for some time. You don't want to give others visibility. You want to take the credit by yourself. That's not how a agile shop is likely to work. That's not the way you have to make Agile work. So what are the different faculties which you must learn or behave or act as a Scrum Master? I would say, hey, these are the 6 different caps or hats which you must wear on your head as an Agile coach. All right. First, management of the overall team. Planning, which is more from a general planning, project planning, or call it sprint planning. Then ensuring that there's obviously a right talent of analysis and design in your team, because they are going to hold that faculty for you. And then there's a suitable development team with respect to programming and coding. There's a robust testing faculty in your team, which is pretty much aware and capable of automated testing, manual testing, creating automation scripts for testing, etc., etc. And then last but not the least, you have a set of people, maybe 1 or 2, doesn't need too many about it, who are expert in configuration, which means they are ready to, they're capable to manage the total configurations which are done in the project. So what they do is that whatever configuration changes are happening in the project, these people take a stock of it, compile it, and then upload the documentation as configuration changes done in this Agile project for the sales process scenarios and the billing scenarios and the fixed income treasury scenarios and the goods issue scenarios and the journal ledger scenario, and so on and on. So you got to keep a very comprehensive documentation regarding what are the configuration changes which are done in the project. Okay, so that's the story about that. All right. So guys, you may do the software development life cycle, but remember at the end of it, there's a release cycle, right? Which means that the comprehensive configurations, coding, testing, which has been done is released into the next system, right? So in terms of release plans, okay, just to make you familiar, remember that this all is running into multiple iterations. So each release cycle will have one iteration, which means whatever changes, testing, codings, and requirements have been built in that iteration. And when we say iteration, we can call it sprint, right? So sprint 1 has a release plan. Sprint 2 has a release plan. So the total release or number of releases in this project are 10. Each sprint has one release. So this means over the next 10 sprints, I will have one release cycle each in order to release the codes into the system. And for that, what are the stakeholders that I must know of? Because, hey, in sprint 1, I'm releasing codes or changes which I've done for sales order module. So I should inform the stakeholders which are sitting in the sales order management shop, right? Similarly, I have to ensure that whatever are at the time of release, whatever the estimations are part of my sprint cycle. Because that inclusion of effort into the total effort will give me an overall timeline and release date. Okay. And typically remember in Agile, we have very short releases because obviously your iterations are short, your sprint cycles are short. So your release is also pretty quick and short. Okay. Okay. So, sorry, I had in sequence, I had a lot of sneeze coming up, so I had to go on mute. Sorry. So guys, remember the 2 weeks iteration kind of a rule, which means Your iteration planning meetings, inclusion of sprints, etc., will run into week cycle. Then there's elaborate requirement, story cards, which is about story points, right? Which is for the user story estimations, and that follows by actual estimation. Then you accommodate some changes if they are coming up, and then you manage the kind of a hangover card. So hangover card is basically any kind of a change which has come in during the sprints, and if you have to park it aside, and then you have to eventually accommodate it back into the sprint cycle. Yeah. And then if you can manage those, you remember we did spillover, right? Spillover defects. So similarly, if there are any spillover defects, either you park them in the current sprint and do them, or you park them and push them to subsequent iteration. This is typically, guys, an iteration level plan for an entire sprint cycle. Okay, I think we have done quite a bit of it. Okay, let me take you through individual phase. When you say, hey, I'm in my analysis and design phase, right? You will proclaim as a Scrum Master. What does that mean? It basically means that from a requirement management perspective, formal requirement specifications are being written, dependencies are being identified, and responsibilities are being assigned to various members. Of course, as the phase says, right? Requirement management. So in requirement management, essentially it's the business analyst, which is very active, typically sitting along with product owner. Okay. And many times Scrum Master doubles up as a business analyst as well. Since you have both the calibers, you have both the skills, that likelihood is very high. So requirement management happens. Then you involve the programming or development resources in design to provide continuity into development or discipline and power on design, which basically in simple English means, guys, you involve the programming and coding people into the design phase so that your design gets supplemented by the right code as well. See, design is what? I want to create a new process, a new way of doing deliveries. Fair enough. I appreciate your creativity. But how would you do it in the system? In an IT system, typically there is a software, you can configure that, right? So you say, okay, some parts of these things can be done via configuration of the software. Good job. What about the rest of it? The rest of it can only be done via programming. There are only two parts of the IT system. There are two cockpits. One is a configuration cockpit, where that software company has provided you actual software which operates in your IT system. And then in order to make custom changes, they have given you a programming language as well. Okay, so you make use of both the things as required. Now this means that when you are finalizing the design, guys, configuration and coding is absolutely real brothers for each other. This means while you are involving your design guys, who are likelihood of being engaged with configuration is more, you also would like to engage your development or testing people. I'm sorry, the development people, the coding people, the programming people, because they will empower the design very well. Right? Okay, great. Two steps well done. Then you have to ensure that your business analyst is always around. Why? He's like your proxy customer. He's like a default customer. You can't go to the customer every now and then, right? And you are a scrum master, don't forget that. You are not a glorious business analyst anymore, because you've already done that job and now you have stepped into the agile life cycle. But you have been the business analyst for this project as well. But the fact is that you can't keep going back to the customer or stakeholders every now and then, which means that you have to act as a proxy customer, whether it's you or your business analyst. But you need to have that proximity to the project team, because project team is going to have ample number of misunderstandings and confusion about the requirements, and then they will need a proxy customer like the business analyst to respond to that. Okay, all right. Then comes your story card. So you remember in estimation session, we said that when we look at a particular user story, I as a scrum master will give a chance to my design architect, my configuration guy, my coding guy, my testing guy, etc., to take a blind shot to say, hey, what do you think? How many story points will this one need to get completed? So everybody has different experiences. In fact, many of them have cross-functional experiences. So the programmer guy will say, okay, you know what? I have configuration experience. I have some coding and testing experience. So overall, from my perspective, I think this should take about 10 story points. So, and then, when we gather the story points, then effectively we either convert it into a unit, which is either man hours or man days. So let's say your tester says, you know what, I think 20 man hours is what we need. So if we are all talking about man hours, so I'll say, okay, 20 story points maybe, right? And then your configurator says 15, and then your programming guy says 17, and then your somebody else says, hey, I think I remember very similar thing, I've done it in 25 points. So what you do is you take an average of all these data points, and that becomes the estimate for your story point. Yeah, so that's kind of called pairing up multiple people, at least two people is pairing, right, on story points, so that you can eventually take a median of all, and that becomes your, and if you saw in the yesterday's video, right, even that is not a precise way, it's just a guess estimate, but it's an intelligent guess estimate. And then story cards, and then it follows up with some testing, and then you're ready to feed back to the customer, and then they tell you what is right, what is not so right, and then you bring it back and run the whole cycle again in order to rectify that. Hey guys, sorry, I forgot to ask you, any kind of queries coming up in your mind? Guys, are you good today? Are you good today? I didn't get much queries today, so I just realized that I need to ask you. Guys, let me know if you're comfortable today. Anybody? Yes, no, maybe, half here, half there. Are you guys doing really well at this point of time, or after 2 hours you think you need some breaks? For heaven's sake, when you will start asking for something in your life, guys? If I don't get a response in the next 3 seconds, means you don't need a break. All right, great. Okay, fine, guys. 15 minutes break. Hey guys. Okay, let's come back. All right, so guys, let me give me a sec. I'm just trying to find. Hey, hang on, hang on. I need to know. I have some very good videos in this distributed agile. Are they coming up somewhere? Coming up, coming up, coming up. Distributed agile. Where are those links? Oopsie. All right. So let's. Okay. Okay, guys. So I think let's begin here. I had a very nice video of. Yeah, I found it. Okay. This is, how you actually run a daily stand-up meeting. Okay. So anyway, we'll see that in a while. Okay, guys. So let's start from here. Okay, so our previous slide was on analysis and design details that you would probably care for in a distributed agile. And now I'm making you look at the development part. So in a distributed agile. All right. See, when you say development, what does a scrum master has to be really cautious, careful about for his development, which is nothing but the programming part of his project. So if you look at the slide, guys, it tells you what is the development part. One, source code management, which means yes, your coders are there. They can look at the existing codes, they can create new codes, they can version control those codes, right? So the idea is, guys, that the source code management, which means managing the assets, which is the new code formation, and keeping them in the overall source code as the right versions, is an important part of the story. So source code management is important. Test first approach. Test first, which means the moment your coder writes any singular line of code, he needs to test that out. So test first before you even talk. Okay, because the single source of truth, which in this case is the system, will tell you when you run a small test whether your configuration code, whatever, is right or not so right, according to the business scenario. So test first approach is important. Continuous integration across multiple locations, which means Chinese team has readied maybe 3 requirements, okay, and they are ready to go live. And then India team has been working on 3, 2 are ready. UK team has been working on 5, 1 is ready. Please decide the sequential arrangement in which these requirements which are done, built, tested, will go into the system and get deployed. So continuous integration must keep on happening whether you are all located in the same team or you are in the virtual different locations, doesn't matter. What matters is that uh, when you are uh, when continuous integration is a part and parcel of your agile projects, then various location distribution should not matter. Just make sure that you have the right sequence in which you want the changes to get deployed. Okay. Fourth thing is, guys, remember, across every location, please do a little senior junior kind of a pairing up between the different skill sets. So let's say coder, one junior, one senior, functional consultant, designer, junior, senior, etc. Okay. The other part is there must be explicit communication. There must be a daily stand-up meeting, which in this case will be a conference call on audio and video, since you have multiple teams in different geographies. But then, hey, my Chinese team, India team, UK team, when do we do a daily stand-up meeting? Of course, when the time zones are aligned. So this means more, let's say noon time. Our 12 p.m. in India, China is 3 hours ahead, so it's already 3 p.m. UK is 4 hours behind, so it's 8 a.m. So let's do a stand-up meeting every day at 12 p.m. or let's say 1 p.m. India time. That time, Chinese team, it will be 4 o'clock, for example, and UK team is going to be 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning. Congenial time zone where everybody overlaps. Great. Let's have a stand-up meeting for 15 to 20 minutes every day, where we will follow a cascading rule. First, the China team will tell us about their developments which they did. Then, what are they going to hand over to us? Then, what did India team accomplish during yesterday? And similarly followed up with UK team. And then each team will collaborate on what are the current challenges anybody has on any particular object development, and if they need any help. Yep. So this is how, pairing or pair programming, either way. Pair programming is in development only. Pairing is across every skill set. Okay. And then we have understood about the refactoring part, right? So how do we include all that? Just in the usual way. So if the team was not distributed, how would you have reacted? You would have been pretty cool and calm. Same, maintain the same decorum this way. Except there will be a teething challenge. But the fact is that whatever best you can accomplish with the different team, and over a period of time, this will improve. You will tend to overlap with each other better in terms of cultural proximity. You will tend to understand and appreciate each other's cultures better. You will understand and appreciate each other's work practices better. They may be a bit different, but the fact is that there's a common agile work practice which is striving anyways day and night to combine all three teams together in a very, very common understanding. So just keep the efforts on and never ever get demotivated as a scrum master if you feel that you don't see a binding culture in the team. See, please appreciate, guys. People are from different cultures. They sit in different geography, different time zone, different countries. They are different people. So please let's accept that on the face value completely before we start expecting what we may or may not like the team to do. Okay, this distributive model, let's look at a little on agile testing as well. Very simple, guys. Just have a quick read. You know all this. Cross-functional agile teams, testers with specific expertise, ensure that the right business value is delivered to the customer. Okay. So let's look at some of the good practices of agile testing. The first one is rapid feedback. So you remember the earlier rule called testing first. So testing first is followed by an immediate rapid feedback. So when the testers test those, programs, or they test those configuration, or they test those test scenarios, etc., depending on what is the complexity of the requirement and what is the build part which is done, after immediate testing, they have to feedback where did they see all clear, or they saw a certain failure in the test which didn't come through. And that failure is because of what reason? Is it a master data failure? Is it a configuration failure? Is it a code failure? Is it some kind of the right data scripts is not used? What is it? They need to tell immediately. So these small things, when done right, start making up an efficient cycle. So even when all the roles on a development team are working in the same location, let's say Mumbai, testing still gets disengaged from other development activities. So why it gets disengaged? The reason is because coding, configuration, and testings are very different activities. While your programmers may code and complete the technical specifications, which and of course on one side the functional configuration is also done. By and large, the configuration and coding people feel that their job is done, and now it is more up to the testing guys to do the required testings. But honestly, guys, is that agile, or are we still talking waterfall? Because that's what I heard in waterfall, that every skill guy completes his task, hands it over to the next, and then goes off to have a beer in a pub. Well, that was waterfall, right? This is agile. Here you work overlap, crisscross, you're working with each other. So that's not happening, guys. So testing is not like an exclusive different activities in agile, and you as a scrum master have to ensure that. Let me make you understand something on what the term called regression. So regression testing, guys, is the last set of testing which is done. What is this testing? The system, the IT system, what you have done is that you have some configuration and coding sitting in it, right? And then what happened? You ran through an entire couple of sprints, right? And then you developed some new codes and new configuration, right? Fine, that's okay, because they were supposedly are going to make some particular process run better. Fine, it's fine. So guys, what I'm trying to say is you did these changes in, let's say overall there are 5 processes. You did these changes in these sprints in business process number 3, 4, and 5. So each process had some config change, some coding changes, etc. So that's fine. Now remember that when you did these changes, these configurations and codes, when they were deployed in the system, they came into the system and they override the previous codes and configurations, right? So that's fine. So now for for process 3, 4, 5, you have new codes, new configuration, and they have come and they have sat in the system, and now they override the previous configuration and coding for business process 3, 4, 5. Fair enough. Now business process 3, 4, 5, and there is the other set called business process 1 and 2. They may or may not be related to each other. But guys, when I bring this new configuration for process 3, 4, 5, I want to still check if it has not disturbed the configuration of any other business process which it was not supposed to. So how do I check that? I run a sanity check, and that's called regression testing. Now what is that? I basically run all the testing scenario scripts on old and new configuration. If any of the tests pertaining to the configuration in business process 1 and 2 do not fail after running all the 50 scripts, I'm fine, because then I know that the new configuration which came in via business process 3, 4, and 5, they are not tampering with the existing configurations of business process 1 and 2. So this means your configuration and coding guys have done a neat job in terms of writing coding configurations which do not temper with the existing coding and configurations of other business processes. To check that, I will do a regression testing. Now, here what I'm saying is, since testing has functional testing, regression testing, all kinds of testing. So if regression failure is found within a short period of time, along with the reason for failure, the solution is rapid and easy. Showing customers for the first pass through a new interface design early means getting more relevant feedback. Identifying missing requirements by doing exploratory testing on early iterations helps team develop the right features. So basically, what is all this German thing about? In simple English says test first. Second, do a rapid feedback so that you can get a relevant feedback from the customer as well. And using their new guidance, you can make the changes to your, your system configuration, etc., so that it comes at par with their business need. Yeah. And the fourth golden rule is, if you do testing, please do it in early iterations so that any kind of changes, etc., can be quickly pointed out and developed within the main development life cycle. So guys, when I say continuous integration, all I mean is that the multiple iterations which are being carried out, whatever is the output what is the output from each iteration, they must be integrated with the testing system so that you can quickly test that out and deploy that. Because see, honestly, that's where you will say, my cycle, agile cycle, is working out, right? Because I'm doing rapid development, okay, I'm doing rapid testing, okay, I'm doing rapid integration with the testing system, so that, or maybe sorry, production system, so that I am able to qualify that. So everything is agile, which means rapid development, rapid testing, rapid integration. Everything leads to agility. So continuous integration is repeated deployment of, as soon as your product is ready, deploy them into the production system. So in order to achieve that, guys, you have to ensure what you see on the left side of the slide, your development, test, and deploy. All of them have to operate in collaboration with each other so that they can help out each other. And this can ensure that your cycle of this wheel of yours, this cycle of yours, is able to continuously run through agile methodology as much. Now, when you say, hey, what else can I do to make my team better? I would say, please do a a pairing between your testing teams. So let the Chinese tester be, paired up with the Indian tester. Okay. How does that help? It helps, guys, because testing is a unique proposition. Now, in pair programming, you can say, whatever, let's say, Anchal is programming, pretty much programmers are all thinking alike kind of things, right? So if Anchal is programming something, I am her pair, right? So I can validate what she's trying to do, okay, and vice versa. So that's fine. But testing is a little more diverse. In testing, you have testing scenarios, you have testing steps and sub steps, right? It's more of a functional situation, and there it's easy to pair program for testers. I'm not saying it's difficult to pair program for developments or programming, but in testing it's a great way to promote constant communication, because testing needs a lot of talking to be done. So if you have assigned a tester from India and looped him up in pair with the London-based tester in your team, what will happen is they two have to talk to each other, because what master data is required to key into, which testing scenario, division of work, and what kind of let's say for test scenarios 1 and 2, how many automation scripts we have, how many manual scripts we have. So the two testers will talk to each other and saying, all right, we can split the work. You do this, I'll do that, and let's meet up, in the evening for a stand-up meeting to conclude that, if everything went well, or I and you may need help from each other. So remote pairing in testing is a great way to promote constant communications. Number one. So often developers and testers are paired to specify test scenarios, doing a lot of exploratory testings, or even help each other to write automated test scripts. So just like you pair programmer with the programmer, you pair tester with the testers. In larger teams, you can actually pair a programmer with a tester. I would like to rely on the fact that they are cross-functional people. So, the testers knows a bit of coding and the coder knows a bit of testing. And then they can overlap each other's knowledge in different business scenarios to come up with just the right test scenarios which need to be exploratory tested, and then which are the scripts which can create, which we can take into automations and which can remain manual. So what I'm saying is, for the tester, his primary skill is testing, secondary skill is programming. For programmer, primary skill is programming, secondary skill is testing. What I'm saying is the two can make a lot of use of each other's secondary skills in order to reboot the system. Okay, the last faculty was, guys, for configuration management. So agile teams need sturdy and flexible code bases in order to be responsive to an ever-changing business scenarios. So you need strong code base. So configuration and code is part of the same bucket. Okay. One way agile teams can do this is by requiring that the code is recurrently integrated multiple times a day across the entire project, which means it's a fantastic statement, guys. So Chinese team is working on invoicing codes. So is India team. So is UK team. Now, when Chinese team wrote a code for, let's say, first step of invoicing, they put it into the system. Now they are collaborating with India team, and Indian programmers probably have been able to write a better code. Then they will send that code into the system, and that code will overlap the code which was put in the system by Chinese team. Because now we obviously agree that a better version of the code written by the Chinese team is now coming from India team. Fine. So there is a constant, guys, there's a constant integration like this going on throughout the day. And that's across the entire project. So what does this help? It helps to maintain your configuration and coding database, because everything is done in order. So let's say Chinese team send the invoice code underscore version 1. India team send invoice code, version 2. So version 2 overlap on version 1. Fine. But in the repository of the system, the version 1 followed by version 2 are stored in the database, so that you have a configuration management, kind of a cockpit to know what did we do earlier and it didn't help. So hence we had to improve the code. What was the reason to do the same? What did we do to improve the code? All such details are part of configuration management database. So what is the idea, guys? You are building a fantastic repository, a library, a manual, which you can reuse later in your other projects as a Scrum Master. Correct? Okay. Another principles of agile mindset brings testing in as a critical element. So guys, testing is critical. I won't say much about it, because your entire fulcrum point of qualifying a particular requirement as built well or not built well is totally dependent on the fact that whether have you tested it repetitively, and if every time consistently your test results have come positive. So on many agile teams, all new code is covered by an automated unit test, and all unit tests are run every time a build is performed. So what is a unit test? When I say, hey, I wrote a one-liner code, I want to run a small test. So unit test is the test which you run on the new code that you have written. And typically unit tests are very small. The script is very small. They are written, they are done as a testing arrangement. They are done only for the codes which are also very small. So in many agile teams, all new code is covered by an automated unit test. This means We talked about automation of testing, right? So whether it is unit testing, whether it is a bigger functional testing, whether it is a even bigger regression testing, you got automated script, guys. So your team has automation scripts, which it just has to run, whether it is a unit test, whether it's a functional test, whether it's a system test or regression test. All the same automation scripts will come in handy. It's just that you're exposing those scripts when you run them in the system to different kind of rigor while you do, because in unit testing the rigor is very less. That script just has to check whether this newly written code line is working okay. But in regression testing, or let's say in integration testing, it has to run across the entire life cycle. So sales order followed by delivery, followed by goods issue, followed by billing. The automated scenario scripts, business process scripts, have to run across all these 4 process areas, and all the configuration and changes that you guys have done, in sales order, in billing, delivery, goods issue, invoicing, are getting checked. So guys, in configuration management, as you may have understood by now, basically a very streamlined process and automation are fundamental. Because when I say automation, I'm assuming that when you there is an automated way in which the new version of the code comes and overlaps the previous version of the code. There's an automated way in which all these version managements are stored in the system. There's an automated way in which testing scenarios are able to do unit testings and subsequent other detailed testings. So this strengthens my configuration management. So you want to stay agile, right? So then you must make an attempt to stay agile. And what is that? Please make an attempt to make all these activities self-documenting. Guys, remember, documentation is a large job. So if you are going to still do a lot of documentation in Agile project, then there's nothing much difference between Agile and Waterfall. Because in Waterfall, I've seen teams spending ample amount of hours just doing documentation. But you need to do some smart documentation in Agile, right? After all, the project must have its own documentation and detailings about what was done, when was done, how was done, etc. So you need to make an attempt to make these activities self-documenting, which means the answer is automation. So when you run a testing scenario, these automated tools ensure that all the test scenario results and the checking on the specific configuration which are involved in this testing, they all get printed as a document. So your automation must include automated test documentation as well. So as an example, if you see, an automated build needs only to be documented in its execution scripts, right? So automated build means the automated coding, programming, blah, 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 which was done. It needs only to be documented in the execution script, nowhere else. So limit the need of documentation, optimize the need of documentation, because that way a well-written automated build scripts proves to be easier option over a manual process. Because generally the manual documentation is done on a Word document. So guys, I can assure you one thing, in Agile, the level of automation is so high that there is actually a lot of time in which you can brainstorm with your teams and how you can make your output as a business outcome better. Reason? Automation. A lot of portions in Agile scenarios are actually done in more automated way. Of course, requirement gathering cannot be automated. Design analysis and design, which is design specifications, cannot be automated. Functional configuration, not really automated. Programming to some extent can be automated. Testing is a lot automated. Documentation is a lot automated. Deployment, which means continuous integration of whatever you have developed with the system, is a lot automated. So if you see guys, 50% of the word of agile is actually purely automated, which means that you have the time, effort, energy, creativity to develop better software objects. That is the reason why you succeed better as a agile scrum master. All right. So we are sitting right now with the team in China, with the team in India, and a team in London or UK, right? So, guys, we better allocate the roles and responsibilities which must be done by different members of the team. Guys, if you have any query at any point of time, please put it in the chat window, okay? All right. So, guys, we need to segregate the roles and responsibilities to the different team members because that's very important. Blunt fact, distributed agile teams are always a challenge to work together. Now, for example, the difference between India and China, whether it is 5 hours or probably it is maybe 10 hours, as the slide says, that's an enormous difference. Because by the time Chinese team logs out, India team has not even probably logged in. So that is a real challenge where the teams do not have a common time zone overlap. Now, second problem. If the product owner is missing an offshore location, because I mean, you have China and UK as your onshore location, so I'm assuming that your client is based either out of UK or China. So one team you have to keep at the client location. Now, if that is the thing, then obviously if UK is the client location, the product owner will also be in UK. This means for the larger development shop, which is mostly India, there is no product owner. This means the India Agile team doesn't have a chance to interact with product owner face to face. Right? So this means what should be the success formula in such cases where only onshore Agile team has a direct access and proximity to the product owner and no other team practically has that. Okay, let's see what we can do in that. So let's divide the work. Let's see what is the best way to do some things onshore and some things offshore and some things combined. So guys, right now, I am not having 3 locations. I'm just dividing it between onshore and offshore. So typically your China or UK can be the onshore and India can be the offshore. And let me tell you, mostly build and test happens to be majority in India because we since India is obviously low cost center, so we do majority of actual programming, testings and all that stuff from India. So let's keep two things: onshore, London; offshore, India. Release planning must be done on site. Reason? Because onshore team is clearly sitting along with the product owner and he can align best in terms of what configuration or changes the business needs at one point of time, which means that sprint planning can also be done largely sitting next to the product owner. If that is the case, guys, then I have to tell you that all those activities which need product owner in proximity have to be done on site, and hence release planning is on site, sprint planning is on site. All right, because these are the two key activities which need clear participation from product owner. Great. Let's see what can be done only offshore. Sprint backlog can be done has to be done in a combined way. Because what is sprint backlog? All the requirements which are parked in a particular catalog, which is obviously brought forward by the product owner. Now, product owner will bring it, show it to the onshore team. But the fact is that for sprint planning and eventual sprint execution, India team is involved a lot because they are doing the building, the testing and all that stuff, right? This means sprint backlog has to be seen together by onshore and offshore team. That's why it's written combined. Similarly, sprint planning, which is done onshore, has to be done in a joint way with offshore as well, because both onshore and offshore are executors of the actual sprints. Hence, this means, guys, point number 5, sprint planning must be combined. Yep. Okay. Now, daily stand-up meetings. They have to be done both onshore and offshore and combined. So onshore team, 7 skill sets within the team, they do a daily stand-up, share notes with each other, and get to work. Offshore team, 7, 8 skill sets. They all of them, sorry, India team, these 7, 8 guys, they have a stand-up meeting. They share notes with each other. They ask for help from each other. They see what is the actual work in progress, etc., etc., and then they get to work. Then, in a common time zone which is overlapping, India and UK has to do a joint stand-up meeting as well. Typically, it can be done, let's say at, as I said, maybe noon time, where UK is about 4 to 5 hours behind you. So it could be 8 a.m. their morning, it could be 1 p.m. your afternoon, and you can do a daily stand-up meeting. It has to be done jointly as well. Okay, you've completed the sprint, great job, but then sprint retrospect, where both the team must have a joint meeting to know what went right, what went wrong. Right? Similarly, burn down chart. Hey, how many story points are done? How many are left? How many are yet to go? Has to be a joint program. It has to be jointly discussed. So this is not an exclusive onshore activity, neither it is an exclusive offshore activity. It is a joint activity. So if this slide has to give you a meaning, it's very clear. Agile comes with exactly the opposite of the requirements which are there in waterfall. So because in traditional way of offshore work culture is actually pretty much adapted to waterfall, which includes great, nicely done down requirements, very well defined deliverables, and then that going into building, testing, and handovers, etc. Agile is opposite, which makes it harder for the team to operate. So that is the challenge which comes to a scrum master like you, that when you're transforming the team, particularly at offshore, because offshore team have always been doing a lot of programming and testing, and they've always been doing it in a waterfall mode, right? So if you work with offshore teams, right, as your role in scrum as a scrum master, it will be very hard for your team to actually operate and make a transition from waterfall to agile. But nevertheless, the fact is that a constant training and mentoring will be able to do that. Now, let's see some typical challenges which you will have as a scrum master in distributed agile. Yeah. 1, undocumented requirements. So you're saying, hey, I'm an agilist, man. Hey, you are part of my team. So guys, no too much of documentation. Great. Never mind. Take it easy. Just quickly articulate us what is, the user story, what is the requirement out of it. Let's do a whiteboarding, make a small presentation. We will ask some questions. We are good. Mr. BA, you don't have to document all that stuff. Save your breath, save your time. Move on to the next requirements. Spend some time with the customer and product owner and bring us more requirements. Good to talk like that. Happy to see the team is optimizing its timeline, because it's not doing a lot of documentation, but it is difficult to conceptualize the business problem, guys, in a offshore location if the onshore team is not sending them a proper documentation on requirements. Because normally it is the onshore team which is sitting with the product owner and the users, so they create the requirements, and if they put it on neatly on a nice documented situation to explain the whole thing, it really helps the offshore team, because now for the sprint execution, it's the offshore team which is more involved from programming, testing, and development of these requirements. So it's a double challenge, guys. So product owner is not sitting with offshore teams, so they don't have a lot of clarity. Onshore teams are not sending them a detailed documentation for requirements. Then also offshore team are at a loss, right? So what can we do, guys? We can keep a strong domain knowledge skill at offshore location. Why? Because since this guy, okay, let's say we are talking about telecom domain. So the onshore team got all the telecom related functional requirements. Okay. When they explain it to the offshore team, our domain expert, which is a telecom domain expert, will be able to understand that very quickly, and he in turn can interpret those requirements to the offshore team. So in spite of an absence of a detailed documentation from onshore team, offshore team will not be at a challenging situation to develop those requirements. Similarly, in the absence of detailed documentation, it's not a challenge. Product owner is not sitting next to the offshore team, not a challenge. Because we got a domain specialist for offshore team in Mumbai, okay, who is as good as the product owner. Our problem is solved. Second challenge, work culture. Generally, offshore teams has strong commitments to work culture. Most of the offshore locations like India and China have a very young workforce, which are typically within 1 to 5 years of experience. So these young fellows, yeah, they prove to be a very dynamic workforce, and they can contribute very well if a lot of constraints are not placed on them. But that's what the agile theory and philosophy is, right? No constraints, no barriers, complete openness and transparency. Please go ahead and develop your codes, test those codes. It's more like a maverick ball game. It's more like a geeky work culture. So you know about the geeks work culture, right? That's what Microsoft and Googles of this world do. They've created such fantastic, kind of, such huge work areas in Silicon Valley, where they obviously employ smart coders, because codes are driving this world. All your automations are driven by codes. All the new generation processes are driven by codes. Or the digital footprint which is coming up, guys, is driven by codes. So coders have a large role to play. And to make their work, their productivity very, very effective, they are given a very open work environment. Now it's all right. I'm talking some of the most premium organizations in the world, which know how to tap the creativity of these such technical people. So they obviously create a work environment like that. So the point here is, guys, in your agile team, ensure that you do not put a lot of challenges on top of your creative team, so that they don't feel hampered that way. So keep a open, good, healthy, positive work culture. Third challenge, interaction requirement. Offshore teams are built mostly not to have many interactions because of the time zone difference, right? But agile enforces that interaction. Word to word dialogue, face to face dialogue exchange on a video conference call, which may last for 2 hours or 3 hours between onshore and offshore team members, is very, very common in agile. This may also demand, that if during the workday, if the necessary interaction could not happen, an India team logged out at their, let's say, 7 p.m. But at 7 p.m. India time, London is still having 2 p.m. London time. This means that if India team or UK team need each other, they must have a cell to cell connectivity as well as required. Because guys, in Agile, remember, you have a fast deployment. You have a very quick turnaround times in testing. So you need each other. And I won't deny that, typically the Agile work effort goes much beyond work hours. Because you have a defined sprint, you need to deliver. So India team and UK team, or they have to collaborate with each other. Okay. The fourth challenge is, guys, the process structures. Offshore teams generally are very familiar with strong process culture. Agile, in a sense, is very lean on processes. So there are not like too many processes and layer after layer after layer of processes. Yeah. This means that we lack of many processes, and we don't want many processes to be there, because we want to focus absolutely on the employee contributions. So that whatever little process that you will have in your agile setup, it should ensure the quality even in the absence of a lot of, in the absence of a lot of leaders around. Because frankly, guys, agile is a lot of hands-on work team. There can be a good scrum master, there can be a great product owner, but honestly, we don't need any more leaders more than that. Yeah. So this means that if there are not too much of leadership to guide, we must have some minimum strong processes. So the process of continuous integration must be there. The process of continuation iteration must be there. The process of test first must be there. The process of constant overlap between the multifunctional people must be there. Make sure this happens. Last challenge which I want to discuss is metrics. So again, offshore teams are fairly familiar with performance metrics. Let's say your sprint down chart, burn down chart, right? So how many story points are still remaining? That all part of the burn down part. Now, defining and distributing those metrics can set some goal for productivity, which you must do. So you as Scrum Master must set some KPIs for your onshore team and offshore team in order to improve the overall sprint process. Okay. So just to give a kind of a reasonable overview of the various challenges that you may have in a distributed agile shop. Okay, guys, I think it's time to see a very interesting video. Just give me a second to connect that back. Sorry, guys. Yeah, okay. So sharing my screen, doing here. Okay. Then use the new hard thing.
Welcome to part 4 of Collabnet's Scrum training series, the Daily Scrum Meeting. As you learned in part 3, our team has already conducted a backlog refinement meeting and a sprint planning meeting. Now we'll watch one of their daily Scrum meetings, somewhere in the middle of sprint execution. I'll quiz you during the scene as usual. This team meets each morning, like most Scrum teams. If you've got people distributed around the world, obviously you'll have to adjust that. Wonder what we'll find in the team room this time. Task board may look messy to us, but it's for their use, not to make outsiders comfortable. For the ultimate in realism, and to save on production costs, some of these characters are voiced by actual Scrum team members. All the situations in these modules are based on things I've experienced as a team member or seen as a coach.
Hello, as your Scrum Master, I'm here to help you with your daily Scrum meeting. We do this at the same time, same place, each day, standing up for 15 minutes.
So what is the agenda? We only have 15 minutes.
At this meeting, each of you will report to the rest of the team your answers to the 3 questions. As a self-organizing team, you're collectively responsible for collaborating with each other, and this meeting can help remind you to do that. To help with that, there are 3 suggested questions. What did I do yesterday? What will I do today? What impedes me? I'll start. Yesterday I went to the facilities department to get better blinds for the team room windows because you guys said you couldn't see your screens on sunny days. Also, yesterday I dropped by to visit Sammy Seagull, you know, that sales manager who keeps asking a couple of you for special favors, to show him where his requests are on the product backlog and how to reach the product owner about moving them up. I think he already knew that, but he didn't realize the effects of distracting the team was so visible to everyone now that we're doing 2-week iterations. Today I'll be with you here in the team room because a couple of you said you wanted help learning test-driven development. My impediments today, sometimes I know what needs to be done, but struggle with the courage to do it. I'm finding it difficult to persuade the other Scrum Masters to contribute to the organisation impediments list we posted on the wall.
Hi team. Yesterday I finished mapping the legacy database schema, at least the parts that we'll need for the view grades PBI. I'm not really a database expert, but I got a lot of help from Peter, who is. So now we both know it. We checked each other's work, so I'm going to move this task to completed. Today I'll start on the code to read the grades from the legacy database, writing tests at the same time as I've started learning. I'd like to pair with Andy on this.
You forgot to answer the 3rd question. Tell us whether you have any impediments.
I was just getting to that. I'm uncertain whether the automated test should go all the way to the database tables written by the legacy system, or if I should just use mock objects.
I've got some ideas about that. I'll work with you on it.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Our product owner isn't here.
Yes, today the product owner is out sharing our product vision with the CEO.
I thought the product owner was not allowed at the daily scrum. We'll never know our true potential for self-organization if someone who outranks us in the company watches our every move.
Yeah, plus, if we can't function for one day without the product owner, the organization might delegate the role to someone with no real vision or authority just because they're less busy. At least our product owner can influence the CEO. Would you rather have clueless Clyde or myopic Myron?
While the product owner has an explicit role in the other meetings, Scrum's rules allow the product owner to either attend or not attend the daily Scrum. As with many issues, Scrum leaves this for the team to decide.
Are we on topic for the daily scrum?
No, probably not. This should probably be a sidebar.
Let's keep a list of sidebar topics so whoever's interested can discuss this after the meeting.
Yesterday, I did the page layout for the view grades PBI with help from Andy, who checked my work. Today, I'd like to write the related HTML and style sheet.
I'll pair program with you. We're still cleaning up the mess from the last time we wrote code without pair programming.
My only impediment is that I wanted to show our page layout to the product owner for feedback, and he's not here. I'll add a task to make sure it doesn't get forgotten.
Okay, team. What I did, what I will do, and what impedes me. I spent yesterday pair programming with Tim on the update grades PBI using test-driven development. As you all know, that includes writing a few lines of failing test code, then writing a few lines of product code, then refactoring to improve the design without changing the behavior. And then we did it again. Tim and I went through that cycle many times yesterday, finally getting the normal use case done. Tim helped me find an error condition. We corrupt the database if the legacy system tries to write the same record at the same time. So I'm adding a new task for us to handle database contention. Today I'd like to keep working on this if it's okay with you guys. I do have one impediment today. I have to leave work early to get my dad from the airport.
Hi team. As Carla said, I spent most of yesterday pair programming with her on the update grades PBI. As a traditional tester, I'm not very familiar with programming, but since Carla was describing her thoughts as writing the code, I thought I could contribute a lot. I was able to point out edge cases she wouldn't have thought of, write some of the automated tests, and spot messy code so we could refactor it. Today, I want to keep working with Carla on the database contention issue with update grades. As far as impediments, I'm an introvert. I'm still getting accustomed to the amount of interaction expected on a Scrum team. Sometimes I need to retreat to my old office to take a break.
Okay, team, what I did, what I will do, and what impedes me. Yesterday, I got our new continuous integration server running. It reruns all the tests every time we make a code change and alerts us instantly about regression failures. Today, I plan to plug our old tests into our new continuous integration process. My impediment is that I don't understand some of the recent changes Eddie made to the build file.
Hey, where is Eddie anyway?
Eddie's always late. Eddie's in the space-time continuum.
Hi guys, sorry I'm late again. Did I miss anything?
Eddie, I know you were up all night working on the build file by yourself, and you probably think this speeds us up. But we see product development primarily as knowledge creation, not just construction. When you work in isolation and then miss meetings like this one, it actually slows us down in the long run.
Let's talk about this offline in another sidebar. I'll try to mediate.
The
We've got some sidebar topics here that some of you want to stay and talk about afterwards. The daily scrum is over.
That was just one example of a daily Scrum meeting. To learn more about Scrum, explore these links. To learn a lot more about Scrum, try one of our classes. This concludes Module 4. Welcome to Part 5 of CollabNet's Scrum Training Series, the Sprint Review Meeting. As you learned in Part 4, our team has already conducted a backlog refinement meeting, a sprint planning meeting, and 9 or 10 daily Scrum meetings. Now that the time has run out for sprint execution, we'll watch the team's sprint review meeting. Be ready for quiz questions interspersed during the module. Since the sprint review meeting is open to outside stakeholders, the team shouldn't be surprised to see us here this time.
Hello, I'm your Scrum Master. Welcome to the Sprint Review meeting. This meeting is open to any stakeholder who's interested. Today we're being visited by Sammy Seagull, Victor VIP, and Yuri User. The highlight of every Sprint Review meeting is a live product demonstration. The team will demonstrate their attempt to build a potentially shippable product increment to the product owner. After that, the product owner will declare which of the PBIs committed to the sprint meets the acceptance criteria agreed at the sprint planning meeting and whether sprint goals were met. When the product owner considered items done, they'll be counted as velocity. The only purpose of velocity is to help the product owner make forecasts. Items that are not done or almost done will be moved in their entirety back to the product backlog. Lastly, we'll listen to feedback from the stakeholders, which may result in new product backlog items for the product owner to prioritize according to his vision. Here's that agenda again for those of you who are hard of hearing. Oh yes, thanks for the reminder. At a previous sprint retrospective, the team and product owner decided to discourage applause because it was interfering with neutral measurement. The sprint review meeting is a key inspect and adapt mechanism in Scrum, so we want to avoid things that could interfere with transparency.
I'm confused. Don't we need to praise people to motivate them?
Actually,
We were finding it a little meeting when it was obligatory. It also raised the question, what if they don't clap next time? This can cause us to try to make things look better than they really are. I'm more motivated by solving interesting problems to build a cool product.
So we don't need to pay you.
We didn't say that.
It sounds like we're getting off topic. Anyone else feel we should return to the agenda? Here's that agenda again.
I'll start the product up now. While Peter's doing that, I'll remind everyone our product's vision is to reduce clerical work for school teachers and school administrators. This sprint's goal was rudimentary capabilities around grading. So here's one of the features we built. Students can log in and view their current grades. Want to try it? Sure. It's simple and easy enough to use. Shouldn't the grades display be color-coded, though? Maybe failing grades should blink.
That wasn't what we agreed.
Fair enough. Is what you just showed me properly tested? Yes, it has automated regression tests triggered by our continuous integration server.
We also did exploratory testing.
I'll keep a list of new PBIs to add to the product backlog as candidates for future sprints.
According to the acceptance criteria, we agreed this should work on the J phone also. Can I see that?
Sure, try it out.
We can also update grades. I'll log in as a teacher and show you.
Okay, I saw the grade update. During the sprint execution, you showed me how this updates the legacy system as well. Is this feature properly tested now?
Yes, we hammered this pretty hard until all the edge cases work.
We can also view grades from previous semesters. Want to try?
Sure. Can I update the previous semester's grades?
Not reliably yet. We'd rather wait until that's properly tested to demonstrate it. Also, that wasn't among the PBIs we agreed to do this sprint.
It wasn't? I thought it was.
Here's what the team committed or forecasted, as some people prefer to put it.
Hey, Tim, did you add the scholarship awards feature yet?
No, that wasn't one of our sprint goals.
I just promised that feature to our new customer, Elastic Education. What kind of team are you?
This is the first I've heard of this.
But I sent you an email.
It's considered the product owner's job to prioritize after consideration. Perhaps Victor VIP and the product owner should talk at the end of the meeting.
Fine. What about GPA? I remember you warned me during the sprint that one was at risk.
We still have a tiny bit of integration work left on GPA. Want to call it 80% done?
I thought one reason we started doing Scrum was to introduce clarity. We don't know how done something really is until we've tested it.
I agree. Let's wait until then to demonstrate it.
Is there anything else ready to demonstrate?
Yes, as we agreed, we also updated the documentation related to the features we added.
Okay, this looks good. Now what?
Let me continue. Tighten your arm. It's really hard. It's your brain muscle. So you tighten it up. It's very hard. And then you start sweating.
Now we're up to the second agenda item. Product owner declares what's done.
So what are you doing?
I suggest telling everyone which committed PBIs you consider done, so we can clear out the sprint backlog.
View grades current semester. As a student, I can see my grades online so that I don't have to wait until I get to school to know whether I'm passing. Acceptance criteria, columns align neatly on Fingerfly 4.1 and JPhone. I declare view grades current semester to be done. Update grades current semester. As a teacher, I can update grades online so I don't depend on administrators to do it for me. Well, I saw that working and you said you tested it thoroughly. I declare update grades current semester to be done. Next, we had view grades previous semester. As a student, I can see my old grades online because I lost my report card. I'm not quite sure what to do with this one. The student can indeed view old grades, as the story says, but I still want the related capability of a teacher updating grades, which you said isn't done yet.
Don't forget, there's another PBI for updating old grades that we haven't committed yet.
I've decided view grades previous semester is done. It's a real eye-opener having everything we need to do in one prioritized list instead of the two separate systems we were using before. You said GPA was mostly done. We've had some bad experiences with mostly done. I wonder what I should do with the GPA PBI.
Remember that time we all ate some mostly done food at the company picnic?
Until an item is properly tested, calling it any amount done is pure fantasy. If we don't know what's wrong with it, we don't know what's involved with fixing it.
or fixing the other problems caused by fixing it.
But calling the whole PBI not done will reduce our velocity.
Yes, that's good. Metrics are usually abused anyway.
Guys, this is the product owner's decision.
Definition of done is much more important than velocity metrics. I know you've worked hard on this, but I'm going to call the GPA PBI not done and return it to the product backlog. Maybe not at the very top, because I've recently discovered some other things that are more important.
What should we do with these old tasks?
I usually tear them up. What matters is which PBIs got done. Remember the time you got all the tasks done, but the product owner didn't feel the PBI was done the way you agreed?
I also remember the time we got an item done and realized there was a task not completed because they turned out to be unnecessary. We tried to keep the goals fixed within each sprint, but the initial task list was just a guess at how to achieve them.
Now we're up to the third agenda item, measure velocity. This isn't part of Scrum, but it can sometimes be useful.
So we got done 1 medium and 2 smalls. Using our relative sizing numbers, our velocity works out to 8 story points this sprint.
What does that mean?
Not much right now. If it stays stable for several sprints, it may eventually help you forecast how far down the product backlog you'll get before the release date.
But the product backlog grows faster than we get the work done. We keep finding more important items in the original plan. Some of the original items might never get done.
Get used to adjusting scope to hit release dates. You'll constantly have to bring the highest value items to the top. Let's get stakeholder feedback about the product.
Hi, I'm one of the teachers who will be using this. I don't like the user interface.
What don't you like?
It's convenient for updating one student's grade at a time, but seeing this caused me to realize I'd rather enter a whole class's grades at once. I don't want to go back and forth selecting each student.
But that's what you asked for.
It's what I originally asked for. Your demo helped me realize what I actually want.
It's a good thing we're using techniques like test-driven development to reduce our cost of change.
Can I add items to the product backlog?
Yes, anyone here can submit PBIs and the product owner prioritizes them.
This seems pretty important, so I'll put it on top for now.
Hey, what about scholarship awards?
Hi, this is Michael again. No one knows what the product owner should do with Victor VIP's request, but we do know it's the product owner's decision.
If you keep the product visible and open, for a smaller time.
you're enjoying the Scrum training series. You can learn more about Scrum or Collab next, or you can send us feedback. Next module in the series will
So let's check. Okay, guys, so let's be a little honest and let me know how many of you were actually got more than 50% in the quizzes. See, these were part of the Scrum Institute formal trainings, yeah. And they, as you see that they do it in a very innovative way. So the animations and the SCORM through which it works is very effective. So that's why I wanted you to see that. Now, let me know, guys, how many of you actually got a good percentage of quiz answers right? Ms. Chopra, I knew you were going to say that. No, I trust you to say right. Yeah. Hey, how about others, guys? Could you get Didin, Navi? Could you get it right? Okay, cool. Hey guys, why do I see less participant today? I mean, tell me something. I mean, when we began the training, didn't we have almost 10 people? Did some people drop during the day? See, I remember Savan telling me that he's got a very important function at home, so he may like to drop this, and he will probably listen to my recordings later. That's fine. What happened to others? Did they communicate something to you before they dropped out? Anything on that? Within Anchal, Navi, did they say something? But I guess there were more people, right? I mean, till about 4:30 p.m. No idea, no clue. Ah, Sunday evening, for heaven's sake. Oof. Okay. All right, good. Hey guys, I just wanted to remind you, where is your BRD? I think Pravesh is the notable exception in the batch who has sent me his BRD. But I want to ask other guys, what's up with you guys? Where is yours? And I supposed to have it now? It's like almost 3-4 weeks we finished our business analysis part. So when are you guys going to give it to me? Okay, guys, listen, I'm going to give you guys another week or two, maybe, not more than that. Please complete your BRDs and then post it to me. Never mind, they may be good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. I'll help to improve that. I swear I will. But you need to send me your BRDs so that I'm not going to, it's all right. I'm not going to rate you on that. It's your first attempt. I'll give you, dope to fill it up, send it back to you. And when you finalize it, send it back to me. I might try to rate you on that. But at least send me your first draft. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So guys, let's do something. I think I think we saw two very informative videos. It's fantastic videos actually. So probably what we'll do is I will leave you to digest those videos. All right, and then maybe we can conclude the session probably now in some time. Yeah. So I think let's probably call it a day today, and then let's meet up next Saturday. And I want to know from people, that what is that? Probably in Agile, they might finding some things which are probably a little difficult for them, but nevertheless, I need to know from them. So let's investigate next Saturday. That's fine. And So you guys take care. Have a lovely Sunday evening ahead, and then have a good week as well. And I'll talk to you next Saturday, then 3 p.m. sharp. Yep. Yeah, Navi, sorry, this is my email ID. All right, take care, guys. Wonderful being together. Over and out for now. Cheers.